Okay, this video is going to show us how to pick up some blocks. So we've got our vacuum gripper attached here, but the first thing we need to do is set up our frames. So I'm looking at the joint screen here, and the one thing I want to point out to you is if you look on the joint screen, you see the J6 is already at 188 degrees. So what we'd like to do is get the joints in the correct position, and we may have to adjust our vacuum hose a little bit because we've just mounted this and we haven't actually set it up here. So I want to get the robot back closer to zero, especially with J6, and get it more vertically down. So I'm going to go to data. I'm going to go to F1, select position registers, and I'm just going to record my current position, and I'm going to press position and look at that position, and you see it's like showing me the position in XYZ, yaw, pitch, and roll. And that's fine, but if you want to, you can actually change and view it in joint mode. And so if I select that, now we're viewing it based on the joints. And so what I want to do is I'm going to just change one joint at a time here a little bit. I'm going to change joint 6 to be 0, and I'm going to press done, and I'm going to do a shift move 2, and I just want it to rotate, and as you can see, it rotated J6 around, so it changed my position there. And so I also want to get like a yaw of I want to try to get the pointer straight down, or the gripper in this case pointing straight down. So I'm going to go back to, I'm going to record my current position again, and then I'm going to select position, and I'm going to go back to the yaw, the Cartesian coordinate system. And so I better re-record this now that I've done that, just to be safe. So I'm going to record. Okay, so I'm going to set my roll to 0, and I'm going to set my yaw, I believe, 180, and I'm going to say done, and I'm going to say move to this. And so it's ranged. Yeah, that's what I thought. I've actually reached an access limit. So I'm going to come over here, and I'm just going to joint. If you look at J4 is 135 degrees. So I'm going to I need to flip that around there. That's just twisted way too much. So I want to start off with J4 close to 0. And so I'm going to jog this around and get J4 pretty much to 0. And then J5 I want to be about 90 degrees because I want this to be pointing down. And J6 now is at 240, so I'm going to adjust J6 also. So I'm just going to get these closer to 0 before you really start, because in the classroom here we never really know exactly where the robot's at and what joints it got set from the last program. So you always kind of want to make sure that you're at least within plus or minus 90 degrees of 0 when you're starting here. so that you can kind of be at least a good starting point. So then I'm just going to flip over to world here now and set this. Now we have to teach our user frame and our tool frames. And so what I'm going to do here is I've got a pattern. So I've got a pattern here where I have an origin and an X and a Y. So I'm going to go ahead and teach my user frame. My tool frame, I'm just going to take the easy way out for my tool frame, and I'm going to jog this up a little bit more so I can get my ruler under there. I was jogging J6 or the roll. I want to jog Z. There we go. So I'm going to jog this. So the first thing I'm going to do is just take the roller and look at it millimeters wise and measure from, I want to measure from the faceplate, which is this. It's really hard to tell there, but right there's where the mount mounts up to the faceplate, and I'm going to measure that, and that looks to me to be about, oh, say about 89 millimeters. That ought to get a pretty close one. So then I'm going to go ahead and go over to my frames. So I'm going to go to Setup, Frames, and I'm in Tool Frames, and I'm going to take Tool Frame 1 here, which was actually set up for the dual gripper. And so I'm going to just come over here and I'm going to teach this frame. And actually, since I measured it, I'm just going to use direct entry. So I'm just going to do direct entry. So that's just 0, 0, and I believe I said about 89 millimeters. And so there is my direct entry. And so if we pop over to the tool frame and we jog our yaw, pitch, and roll, right, we should be able to see we should be able to see that just roll right around that point, so that we can see that our tool frame is pretty good now. So that is our tool frame. Now I'm going to set my gripper, and so the first thing I'm going to do is just look at my J6. So my J6 here is only at about 1 degree, so that's pretty good. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to twist the gripper around so that the gripper is pretty much kind of perpendicular to the robot. So when I attach this piece, it's got it's kind of pretty much straight out to the one side for the hose there. All right, so I was able to just twist this around here on this gripper and just to line it up so that the hose will be out of the way. Because one thing we have to worry about now, when we're going to start using grippers or other attachments, that we got to worry about the hosing and the wiring to that as the robot twists and moves all around. So we got to always be aware of that. We can't be pinching hoses or cables and causing damage and causing failures. All right, so now I want to teach my user frame. So I have here my origin point, and I'm going to just do my 3-point method and teach the origin here. Now to do that though, I'm going to go ahead and use this pointer. So I actually have this pointer, and I'm going to attach the pointer to the suction grip. All right, and when I do that, of course, then that's actually going to change my user frame a little bit. So we may have to adjust it later. But I'm going to go ahead and go back to Menu, Setup, and Frames. And then I'm going to come back to the main screen of tool frames, go to Other, select User, go to my user frame, and I'm going to go ahead and I have no idea what this user frame was, so I'm just going to clear this thing out and create a new user frame then right in here. So I'm going to go to the details of this, and I'm going to teach my origin point. But at first I'm going to attach this gripper. All right. So I need to attach the gripper. Now I just hooked this up, and when you look up here on the robot, you see there's several connections up here where we could attach air hoses. Okay, so there's internal solenoids that we can enable with a robot on and off. So the question is, which one did I hook it up to? Well, if you don't really know, you can simply press the I/O button, go to I/O, and you know, it's robot I/O, there's only 8 of them, and so you just kind of come in here and pick one of those and select it and see which one's on. So we can force that on, and that attaches my pointer. Okay, so I've got my pointer attached there. I just turned the robot I/O on and attached the pointer. And so now I can come in here and teach my tool frame. Menu, Setup, and I'm already in the frame, so I'm just going to go down to my origin. And I like to jog in the world mode. And I'm just look around here and get that pretty close, and I'm going to record that point. Then I'm going to move in the minus X, move over to my minus X point. Slow it down a little bit. I need to come down just a hair. And that's my second point. And then I like to move back to my original point. And now I'm going to move in the plus Y direction. Okay. And that's about as far as I can go. So I'm just going to record that. I need a little bit in the X, I think. And I'll record that, and we'll call that my user frame. Now, I want to point out to you here that because I have this pointer attached, actually my Z is actually going to be off by the height of that pointer. Okay, so we could go back and we could adjust our Z at another time, but I'm not too worried about that for now. But I've got my tool frame set. So now what I want to do is I'm going to create a program to pick up these blocks and stack them. So I have some Jenga blocks here, and I want to pick these up and stack them. So to start with, I'm going to come to my I/O. I'm going to drop my pointer now because I'm going to be picking up the blocks. And so what we're going to do is just set. Alright, so what I've done here is I've set up these blocks. So I have 4 blocks, and each one of them is about 30 millimeters apart. So from the left edge here to the left edge of the next block is 30 millimeters apart. So you want even spacing on there. And I try to kind of mark it on the paper, but I'm just kind of set them up there. And so what we're going to do is we're going to pick each one of these up. So each one is about 30 millimeters apart. And so we're going to use an offset. So we use a position register with an offset to offset that distance in the X direction. Now remember, this is in the X direction because I just taught this user frame. So I know that X is going in that direction. So my offset is going to be 30 millimeters for each block, to pick up each block there. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to teach it to pick up this block at this point, and then the next block will be this point plus 30 millimeters, and the next block will be this point plus 30 millimeters. And then what we're going to do is we're going to stack them. I guess I'll stack them, say, right about here, and I'm going to stack these. Now when you stack them, you got to worry about the height, so you're going to have to offset your height. So if we use our roller here and we measure the height, it looks to be about 13 millimeters. So the height seems to be about 13 millimeters. Okay, so I'll just write those down so I don't forget here as we go along. But so we're going to have to offset on there. Now I'm going to go ahead then and create a program. So if you watch to the right of the screen here, I'm going to go and press select, create, my program name. I'm going to pop down here to the keyboard. Since this is one of the new 830iB pluses, we can actually use the touchscreen keyboard here. And I'm just going to call this AA Jenga. Alright, so there's my program. And now remember my frames, I taught user frame 1 and tool frame 1. So the first thing I'm going to do is go to my instruction, and I'm going to have a register, or no, excuse me, not register, I'm going to go to frames over here first. And then I'm going to set my user frame to be 1. Don't want it to be a register. Notice I have like direct or indirect. I just want this to be a constant. Okay, so and then my okay, so user frame 1, and then I'm going to select tool frame 1 just to make sure that we're in the correct frame. Oops, wrong one. Tool frame num. Choice constant and 1. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to set a data register. So I'm going to take a data register, and this data register, go back to data registers. So I'm going to have I'm going to jump down and find an open one, say 50. Okay, so 50 is going to be my offset. Let me edit that actually. I'm going to call this okay, so I'm going to call this one the X offset. Okay, so this is going to be my X offset, and then 51 will be the Z offset for when I stack them. So this is going to be my Z offset. Alright, so now when I come back to my program, the first thing I'm going to do is initialize those to 0. So I'm going to register 51. Oh, I would do 51 too. Register 51 is going to be 0. And register 50 is going to be 0. Okay, and that's messing with my OCD, so I'm going to put 50 first and then 51. Alright, so I've initialized those. Now I want to re-initialize my position registers also. So what we're going to do is we're going to use these basically as counters to keep track of how high that we need to go. And so we're going to advance them. So remember, the X offset is going to be 30 each time, and the Z offset is going to be 13 each time. So now I need a position register for both X and for Z offsets. And so I'm going to go back to data. So I'm going to press my data button. I'm going to go back to type, select position registers. And I'm just going to use 50 and 51 again, because that's what I was using before. But this is going to be position register 50 and 51. So I'll go ahead and comment these. So this is register, this was the X, this is 50 here, so that was my X. And this is my Y. Or Z, sorry. This is my Z. Okay, we don't need to offset in the Z direction. And now I'm going to go back to my program. Now I want to initialize these. Now a position register, remember position registers actually have 6 values. They have X, Y, Z, yaw, pitch, and roll. And you would have to initialize all 6 of these. And initially, we want to offset them by 0. And so we just need to initialize this to 0. So you can see like 51 right now has got a bunch of values in it. Register 50 also has a bunch of values in it. Now I could force them all to 0 right now, but then when they change, I would have to manually do that. So we want to do this in our program. So I'm going to come into the program here, and I'm going to go to instruction, and I'm going to go to registers, and I'm going to use the minus option here. And I'm going to select this, but now notice here I'm going to say PR, position register. So I'm going to say position register 50 is equal to LPOS, which is the current position, minus LPOS. All right, so let's just look at our current position once here. So our current position in the X direction is 294, but we're subtracting that. Right? So we're taking 294 in the X minus 294 in the X, which gives us 0 in the X. Likewise, I'm going to do the exact same thing for, that was actually 51, I guess. I did that again. So that was 50, and now I'm going to copy this. So I'm going to come to copy, select that line, copy it, and then paste. Now, since there's no motion instructions here, it doesn't matter which paste I choose. If there's only one line, so the order doesn't matter, and there's no motion instructions associated with it, so you could paste logic. It probably makes the most sense to paste the logic, but literally you could choose any of them for that. So here what we did was we just initialized our position registers. All right, so now what I'm going to do is create my label to return to, because I'm going to have to return to this. So I'm going to go register. Well, actually, before I do that, I want to set my home position. So you always want to start out in a home position up above where you're working. So I'm going to take here, I'm going to jog my robot. I'm in the world, so plus Z will just go straight up. So I just move my robot up a little bit. And I'm going to record this point. Okay, and I want this to actually be joint motion, because this is going to be my home point. So this is my home point, and I'm just going to have pretty much maximum speed here and a continuous 100, because we don't necessarily have to hit this point. We definitely don't need to stop at this point. Okay, but we just want to make sure that we're going to start and return to that home position. So this program's only going to have 3 points. The first point is the home position. The second point is where we're going to pick up at, and then the fourth position is where we're going to set it, or the third position is where we're going to set it down at. So we're going to have 3 points. So now I'm going to put a label, because once we do this, we're going to have to return to it. So I'm going to go instruction, label. So I have label 1. And then I'm going to move to my pickup point. So I'm at home, I'm going to move to my pickup point. So I'm going to come over here and jog my robot over to where I want to pick up the blocks at. So slow it down here a little bit. Now, when you're working with a vacuum gripper, you need to make sure that you get it down enough that you compressed it. So if you see there, let me raise it up a little bit here. You see how right there it's touching, but if it may not be a perfect grab. So we need to make sure that we have a little bit of pressure there. Oops. And so we need to make sure number one, we want to try to be straight, so I'm straightening it up here just a little bit. And then I'm going to come straight down and compress this just a little bit. We don't need a ton of compression, but we want to make sure we have some compression. And so now this is going to be my pickup point. So I'm going to go ahead and I actually need 3 copies of this. So I'm just going to pop over here to point, and I'm going to put 3 of these. Okay. Now, the first and the last one, these are going to be offsets. Okay, so now number one, these are all going to be the same point. These are all 0.2, which is my pickup point. So these are my pickup points. And we need a linear motion here and a slow motion down, because this middle one is the one where I'm actually going to pick up. All right? But before that, this one here, I'm going to make a joint motion. And I'm going to do a choice here for termination. I'm going to make this continuous 10, because I don't necessarily need to be at this point, but I need to be, I want to be up above here, and then I come straight down. Then I need to come straight back up. All right, so this point is just positioning it. So now we're going to go to choice, and here under choice we're going to go to offset position register, and this is going to be the X direction offset. All right, and now on line, so we're going to be up here, and this is going to be offset by whatever our distance is. Okay, now we need a, I need one more offset, okay? Sorry about that. Yeah, I need one more offset. So I'm going to come down here. This offset is just going to be above. I'll just call this one above, offset above. Okay, so that's going to be position register 52. All right, so that is our offset above. And so I need to come back here, so I need to make sure, I'm going to copy this line. And then I'm going to paste it. Okay, so let's see, this one here should have been 51. And this one should be 52 now. So I'm going to zero those all out. But for 52, for PR 52 now, I also want to insert a line here, and I want the Z to be 100 millimeters above that. So if we look here, I want this to be about 100 millimeters above, so maybe even 150. I'm going to say 150 millimeters above we're at my pickup point. All right, and so I'm going to set that to be 150 above. So I'm going to come back to instruction. I'm going to go to register, and I'm going to say equals in this case, but I'm going to come down here to I, comma J, and I'm going to make register 52, number 3, which is my Z. Okay, so number 3 is the Z, and I'm going to make that a constant of simply 150 millimeters. So I need, when you set up, you need to, before you pick something up, you need to make sure you come straight down to it. And then you need to go straight back up. Otherwise, you might be hitting things as you're moving this block around. So we need to come up away from that. And so now, when I come back here to line 11, I'm going to set this offset. This is my offset above. So I'm setting this offset above. And then down here on line 13, I'm going to return to that point, but I'm going to use a continuous because I don't need to stop at that point. So I'm going to make it a continuous 10, and then I'm going to go to choice, offset, position register 52. Okay, now that set my offset in the above case, all right, but I also need to do a offset in the let's see, I also need to do an offset in the X direction. So wait a minute, so I need an offset in the X direction, and I need the offset in the Z direction. Now, you can't do two offsets on the same line, but you can do a tool offset. So now I'm going to come over to tool offset position register, and I'm going to use PR52 to be the tool offset. And the only catch there is, remember that Z, I need it to be a minus 150Z, not a plus. Okay, so I'm going to make that a minus 150Z there. And so that gives me that offset. Choice, offset PR, 52. All right, so before I go any further, I just want to test this. Okay, so I'm just going to test this bit of code. So it's going to go up into the home. And now it's, let's see, that was moving awful slow. I'm going to make that like 50% speeds here. Okay, and then we're going to do this speed I already set to 100 millimeters per second, and this one I'm going to set to 100 millimeters per second. All right, so now I'm at home and I'm going down. Okay, so you see right there, we already did line 11. So let's watch this one more time. So I'm going to, let me turn step on so we go a little bit slower. So I'm going to I'm going to the home position. That's my home position. Now I'm going to go to my next position. Okay, now notice this next position here is 150 millimeters above my pickup point. So we see here this is 150 millimeters above the pickup point. And so we're going straight down to our pickup point. All right, so now we're at our pickup point, but now we need to pick up the block. So right here, before we go back up, see if I go on, it's going to go straight back up. Okay, so now I don't know why it didn't go up here. Oh, that was a 52. That should have been a 50 there. Okay, so the offset is, the X offset is 50 and the Z is 52. So that's why it wasn't going up. So now you see it's returning back to this point. Okay, but we didn't pick it up. So what we need to do is we need to come to this point where we want to pick it up. This is our pickup point. And now that we have our pickup point, we need to insert two lines. So I'm going to go back over here, edit command, and insert two lines. The first line is going to turn my robot IO on. So I'm going to go back to instruction, and I'm going to go to IO, and I'm going to select robot output number 3, and I'm going to turn that on. So that's going to turn my gripper on. Now the next thing we need to do is wait, because air grippers are kind of slow. So if we just start moving as soon as we turn it on, it may not have a chance to actually grip. So we got to grab a hold of this thing, and we need to make sure, we need to give it a little bit of time to make sure we get a grip. So I'm going to come here to instruction. I'm going to come down to a wait, and I'm just going to tell it to wait for like 0.2 seconds. It's not a huge time, but it gives it that 20 milliseconds for the suction to actually grip. All right, so let's go ahead and try this much of the code then. All right, so again, we're going to return home. So we're home. Now we're going to our Z offset of 150 millimeters above our point. Now when I was moving around, my block got shifted, so I'm just going to line my block back up. And then I'm going to come down here, and it's going to pick this up. It's going to turn on the gripper. It's going to wait, and then it's going to return to the 150 millimeters above there. And I'm going to force my IO off. So I'm going to force the IO off here and worry about teaching the next point. Alright, so what I've done here is I've set my block down. So I've taken this block and I've set this down here. And this is going to be where I'm going to pick it up. So I've just got it lined up here, so I want to pick this up, or set this down. But notice that the block is rotated 90 degrees. So I'm going to go around. I'm going to rotate my joint by 90 degrees. So I guess I'll do that with a data register or position register. So I'm just going to pick a position register here. By the way, if we look at this one, notice that position register 50 is empty, because my code, inside my code, right, up here on line 5 of the code, I said LPOS minus LPOS. So it was equal to a whole bunch of stuff, but now it's simply equal to 0. And so now I'm going to come in here, and I'm just going to record my current position to be where I'm at, so we can see that position. But what I wanted to do is I want to get my rotation is at 140, and I want to rotate this 90 degrees. Okay, so I'm going to go to the position, and I'm just going to do the math here. So it's a 141, and I want it to be rotated 90 degrees. So I'm going to subtract, and that'll give me 51.692. And then I'm going to move to that position. Okay. And so, I don't know if you saw that, but it was actually rotated. All right, so like if we come back to the program here, I'm going to go, I think I was at this line right here, so let me go back here. Okay, so I've rotated this 90 degrees, and now I'm just going to move it over here to where I want to set down this block. So I put the block there so I know where I want it, and I'm going to slow this way down. Now I'm getting close. Okay, so I'm gonna tell it this is where I want it to pick it up, or set it down, sorry. So this is going to be my stack point. Right there. Okay, so I've got it there where I want to pick this up. All right, and so the first thing we want to do is we want to make sure that when we move, that we're moving up out of the way. So I'm going to go ahead and go back to my home position just to make sure that I'm safe there. So I'm going to record a point here, which is going to be point 1, which is going to return home. And I don't want to move too fast, but we don't have to get close to home. We just need to be up and out away as we're moving around. So I'm just going to make that continuous 100. Now I'm going to go and I'm going to set down the block. So what I need to do is I need these three points, and these are all point 3, which is my stack point. So this is my stack point. And so this one should be that. Now, when I go down to stack this, I probably want this to be a linear move. And then this is there's gonna be an offset there. Whoops, that should be 3. All right, so you basically, every time you need to pick a piece up or put a piece down, you actually need 3 points that are almost the same, but they're going to be offset. So I have, I think I'll just do a linear for each of these. Okay. Or, well, no, we can do a joint for this first one. But this one needs to be a linear, and this one needs to be a linear. And the speed of those now, we don't want to be moving too fast. So we were doing, I think, about 100 millimeters. We should probably do that again. All right, now here we're actually going to set the thing down. So we need to stop. So this needs to be a fine. All right, so because we're actually putting it down at this point. But this point here, we're just kind of swinging by and lining up so that we can come down. So we just want to line it up. So continuous 10 is good for that. This one here, again, we've already set it down, so and we're leaving, so we can set it down again. Now, we have to insert in here. I'm going to insert my two lines, and right in here between these the second and third reference to point 3, I'm going to put in my robot IO. So I'm going to go robot output. Okay, output number 3, which is the vacuum, and I want to set that off. And then I'm going to have my wait again. So I'm going to give it a chance to actually let go before it starts moving again. All right, and so the other thing we need to do is we need to put these offsets. So now this is going to be the Z offset, not the X offset, because I'm going to stack these on top of each other. So this is going to be a Z offset. Okay, and so that was 51. And then I also need the tool offset. So I also need the tool offset, which was 52. Now, this point here, which is where I'm stacking it, every time it needs to move up. So this point also needs the Z offset. Okay? So this point also needs the Z offset. So we need to put the Z offset and we need the pickup offset, which was a tool offset. Or wait a minute, not on that one. Sorry, which one am I on? Okay, this one needs both the tool offset and the Z offset. This one simply needs the Z offset. So this one's wrong. This should be a 6 and a 52, which is my Z offset. Okay, so line 17 has to have both the Z offset and the offset above for setting it up and down. This one simply needs to have the Z offset. And then this one needs to have both again. So this one needs to have 6, which is the Z offset, 51, and the tool, which is the 52 offset. Now we're going to return home, and then we're going to advance our offsets. And then we're going to do an if statement, and we will be done. So, return home. So this is going to be our home point. And we don't even need to get close to that point. But now we're going to advance our counter or our offset values. So if you remember, come back up here. 50 was the X offset. We need to add 30 to it each time. 51 is the Z offset. Okay, so I'm going to come down here. I'm going to go to instruction, registers, and we're going to add to register 50. And we're going to add a constant of 30 millimeters. And then I'm going to copy this. And we're going to 51 is the Z offset, and that was, I believe I said 13 millimeters. All right, so now we need to change our position register values for either the Z or the X, depending on which one we're changing. So instruction, register again, okay, but in this register, I'm going to just do an equal, but a PR, okay, so we're going to, it's going to be PR 50, which is for the X. So we're going to move in the X, and we're going to set it equal to our register value, which is register number 50. And then I'm going to copy that. And I'm going to, this is going to be 51, which is the Z offset. So that should have a 3. And that's going to be register 51. And now, as we go along here, I've got this set up for 4 blocks. All right, so remember, this was for 4 blocks. So we have 0, 30, 60, and 90. So while, so we need an if statement here, and we need to say if it's less than, so if register 51, oh, no, 50, if register 50 is less than 90, actually less than, we need to do 90, so let's do less than or equal to. So notice here, I selected less than, I want to change that to less than or equal to. So I just hit choice and change that. Okay, and this should be a constant, and so if it's less than or equal to 90, then I'm going to jump back to my label. Otherwise, I'm going to be done. All right, so this was a pretty quick program here. I wasn't real close tolerance with my pickups and everything, but we're just going to run it and see what happens here. So I'm just going to kind of try and set these. I marked the lines, and we'll just kind of see if this program's going to run. Okay, so we're returning home. All right, so here we're at the point above. Okay, I guess I'm going to change my offset. I've made it minus 150. I'm just going to make the offset minus 50. And we'll just try that here. Okay, so at that point right there, we were 50 millimeters above where we want to pick this up. Okay. So then we're going to go on down. We're going to pick this up. We've grabbed the block. We're taking it over. We're getting close to home. And now we're going above. And this is, we're almost to our offset above that. And now we set that down. Now that wasn't exactly 90 degrees there, but that's fine. We'll let that go. Okay, I missed a point here. I noticed that when I was programming, but forgot to go back up here. So when we're here, 50, okay, so here we're supposed to be at the pickup point. And so we should be at our X plus 30. And it doesn't look to me like we're doing that. And this point here, I forgot, this will need that X offset. So we need to add that on here. So that's going to be a 50 onto this one. Okay, I had to touch up my points a little bit, and so I've reran the beginning lines of my code so that you see, because after I changed my frame, now my points are going to have to be retaught. So I ran through here and I zeroed out these position registers by running my program, running lines 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. And so just to double check, we can come over here and we can look at these and you see that it's totally zeroed out. Okay, so those are totally zeroed out. So now I'm going to touch up my pickup point. So I'm going to come down to my pickup point. Right here is my middle pickup point. That's the one I want to touch up. And so you see, I do have the offset in there right now, and that kind of makes a difference. So it'll ask me a question when I try to touch this up, but I'm going to line up the robot. So I'm going to shift it over here to get where I want to be. And that's going to be my point. So now I'm going to do a touch up. And since I have multiple references to point 2, it's asking me, do I want to make this a brand new number? And the answer is no. So I press no. And then it's asking me which frame I want. And I want frame 1. That must have been what happened before. My frame, I think, maybe was okay, but I saved the point in world frame instead of tool frame. And so I had to that's probably why I'm reteaching these points here. Now, subtract the offset data from the current position? The answer here should be yes, but since my position register is 0, it really doesn't matter. Okay, but that new question is because of the offsets that we have. All right, so I've taught this as position 2. I also need to teach position 3. So I'm going to come on over here, and I'm going to move over to this point above. This is the point above. And I think this won't go here. Not sure why my frames must have got off here, but I'm going to move this over here. I'm going to reteach point 3 again. Now the beauty of using these offsets is I only have 2 points that really need to be retaught. So the first thing I want to do is I want to jog this. I want to set my roll 90 degrees. All right, so I want this thing to rotate. Okay. So I'm sorry, hold on now, let's see. I want to move back to this point. Okay, so I'm at this point now. I think the easy way to get this thing rotated 90 degrees is to pop over to a position register and then go to position and 132. Oops. And just force it to rotate those 90 degrees. So I'm just going to force it to rotate the 90 degrees over, and then I'm going to go ahead and jog it over. So I'm going to get it close. I'm going to slow it down. And that's going to be the point that I drop it. So that's my stack point. So here is my stack point, and I'm going to touch up the stack point. I want no for no new ID, and yes, I want to subtract the tool offset. But again, my tool offset is 0, and so it really doesn't matter. And then my my user offset. Okay, so so that is my point here. And there's the values, 46 minus 84. 46 minus 84. So I just want to double check those. So I hit the position and I look at this point and make sure that those match up. Alright, so now I'm going to test this again. I think I'm going to see if my home position got messed up, because after doing all that, my home position may have also got messed up. So I'm going to go ahead and run the program. Till it moves home. So it's moving up into its home position. And then I'm going to set my blocks up, and we'll try this one more time here. right, so we're going over. We're at the point up above. So this is the point up above here where we have our tool offset. So I think I ended up setting that to about 50 millimeters above, right? So here's my tool offset, minus 50 in the Z and the tool direction. And my other values are just 0 right now. And then I'm going to pick up at point 2. I've picked it up. I waited for 0.2 seconds to give it a chance to make sure it grabbed. And now I'm moving home. And now I'm going to move to 50 millimeters above my drop point. And then I'm going to set it straight down. So it's just going down perfectly straight. I let go. I come straight back up so I don't hit anything. If I had obstacles in the way, I need to make sure that I'm not going to hit any obstacles. So I'm going straight down and straight back up. Now I'm going over and I'm grabbing the next one. Notice that it's automatically 30. This position, I let go of shift there, so it's all right. But this position, the Z position got changed 13 up, and the X position got set plus 30. So that's why it went over and picked up the next point. Alright, so now it's going to set it down, but it didn't go down quite so far. And that's the end of the program. All right. So again, I'll line my blocks up here. And I didn't have them all perfectly straight, so when they stacked them, they may have been a little bit off. All right, so let's just go ahead and run it again, maybe get a different point of view. So it's picking up the first block that had 0x offset, and it's going to set it down with 0z offset. Now it's moving over, and it's grabbing the next one. All right, so I'm going to hold it here just for a second to change my display so that we can watch the data registers. And we can see right now it's at 30. And this offset is 13 millimeters above what it was. And we'll just watch our robot I/O while we're at it here too. And we can kind of see that, but our robot I/O is on. We bring it over here, we set it down, the robot vacuum goes off. We grab the next one, bring it over, and set it down.